My favorite interview this year was Richard Childress.
Yeah.
Why?
Richard Childress, first of all, I never had the opportunity to actually sit at a table with Richard Childress and have these conversations. It did not feel like an interview. That was the one that felt like an absolute conversation amongst people. And it also was a theme that I detected pretty early on, and it certainly with Richard, and that was that, and it became true with Steve Park and with Michael Waltrip and others, and that there were still people processing the loss of Dale Earnhardt, right? And it occurred to me, this may be just my opinion, but it occurred to me that the reason they're still trying to process and not having more success, 18 years later, is it seemed like there were conversations that should have been had that had not been had, and now they were happening at this table. That's what I felt. I think about Michael Waltrip. I think about Steve Park. I mean, the moment with Dale, with you and Steve Park, where you said to Steve, we're not blood brothers, but as soon as that happened, you were as close to me as family as anybody could be.
I will say this: if Steve doesn't win that race, I don't know how DEI would have done going forward. I don't know that we can quantify how much that one single win. If you look at all the companies in the sport and the history of NASCAR, and you think about, well, with this company, what's the biggest win for that company? What's the one win that mattered the most? I think you would have to put that one near, if not at the top of the list for DEI, because had that not happened, I don't think that we would have had any of the success that we had going forward. Because we were, as Steve said, we were really unsure on how to proceed.
Yeah.
And if we go to that race, I crash on the first lap. I don't know where Michael ran. And if Steve doesn't win, what's the morale? What's that all carries over. And so for him to go out there and win that race gave everybody a bit of some relief. And the thing about it, when you lose somebody like that, the world keeps going. Rockingham was coming Sunday, whether we were going to be there or not. And so we had to make that decision to go. He goes up there and wins the race. And it just kind of kept pushing that boat along, kept pushing the barge down the stream. And we really, really needed that. And so that's what I remember from that day. I remember us wearing the three hats, sitting on. I remember, I had a bad day, but the one thing that I enjoyed the most is that me and you and Michael sat on the wall right before the start of the race on pit road, and we're not blood brothers, but in that moment, I felt like we were off as family could be, and we were there and we were together, and we had nothing but each other.
Yeah. And y'all were laughing. There's a picture. I remember seeing it, and it's you guys are smiling and laughing. It looks like Michael's sort of cutting up. I don't know what y'all were talking about.
Probably something Michael said.
Yeah. But it looked like that you guys were healing in that very moment.
Yeah.
And that picture really encapsulates that.
Yeah.
Well, I think like Junior said it the best. When you're in that situation, you got to realize, we're DEI. We're a high-profile team. At that point, we weren't letting any outsiders in. So all we had was really ourselves to grieve, to mourn, to think of how we were going to make ourselves and our team and our people better. We had a lot of employees, and the greatest thing I ever heard was that somebody said this is the beginning of the healing, not only for the race team, but for the race fans. Yeah, we might have had 100 employees, but there's 100,000 race fans. And that one moment was the beginning of the healing of DEI, because at first when we sat at that table, the high level, people and brass and drivers, and we just didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know how to react. We didn't know what what we need to do. So winning that race was definitely the beginning of the healing, where we learned as a team that we can still move forward and we can still continue to grow and win races, even in the absence of our leader.
Well, I mean, that moment right there was profound. Obviously, Michael Waltrip, his stuff. But I just, Mike Helton, even, you talked about what you wanted Mike Helton. Why did you want Mike Helton? It was to ask him about his relationship with his dad, was it not? Or your dad, was it not? I mean, you wanted to know things.
When we do this show, I think we have a responsibility to NASCAR and to the sport to create health and boost our stars and boost the sport and create interest, right? And I think we do that. There were a lot of guests on the show this year that were, they were strictly here to tell Dale stories, right?
That's right.
And that's our prerogative, right?
That's right.
And it's a bit selfish, but there was a lot. I think there was an opportunity this year to do some closure and some healing or whatever you want to call it. And we had several guests that were strict. That was what they provided, and they provided some great insight into those relationships and those experiences. But for me, we would have a guest on like that. It would be amazing. It would be great. I would enjoy the conversation, whether we were going to make it a podcast or not.
Right.
And then we'd be done, and I would think in my mind, all right, that was nice. That was great for me. Now, let's bring in a current driver. Let's bring in, somebody maybe not so connected, to that Earnhardt legacy. And so it was that you tried. I mean, because I could sit here and have I honestly, I mean, if I wasn't a broadcaster and I didn't feel any sort of responsibility to NASCAR in general, like the global NASCAR sport, if I didn't have any responsibility to that, we'd just sitting here and tell Dale Earnhardt stories every week.
Right.
And we'd have somebody come in here and say, old hunting buddy, I don't know, whatever. We just keep picking through the file and bring people in like Hank Parker Sr. He's probably got 1 million Dale Earnhardt stories.
Not because of how many downloads it would generate, not because of that, but because
I'm adding Hank right now.
It's a list. it's stories that you yourself are looking for your own information, for your own peace of mind, for your own joy, and that was the criteria of the season. Now, one of the things, if I go back to,
but I think I want to finish one thing though, but I felt like that, as selfish I was about that, like, man, I want to hear I want to talk to Richard and see what we can learn something new about Dad. As soon as that would happen, I would think, man, let's get Tony Stewart in here, right? Or let's get, Bubba Wallace in here. And
yeah, that won't be a deep interview. Let's just get Bubba Wallace in here.
let's get back. Let's veer back toward, 'cause
present day.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that is. There's that's always kind of bothered me, I guess, is the way
look, this is Dale Earnhardt Jr. to a T. He's always worried about what other people are thinking, and you don't want to be accused of coming off as doing things for you. You want to be able to provide stuff for other people, and so you definitely were aware all season of the balance that we're offering people. There's a balance. And so if we went too old school, too much during a month of whatever, then we would try to come back around with some other ones. And I thought that the new guys also gave us a lot of good moments this year.
There's not a lot of so there's a ton of history out there, right? When you look at the crop of current drivers versus the entire history of the sport and all the content that you could create from that, right? It's so easy just to keep going back to the history bucket because it's full, right? And that was a tough balance for me. I felt like throughout the year is like, man, we've had a lot of history. We've had a lot of guests from that have a historic story, and And we got to get a current guy in here, get a current guy in here, get a current guy in here. And it was tough. It wasn't easy. And those guys are not easy to nail down. They're actually hard. The drivers
Harder.
today,
Yeah.
like are harder to get in this room.
Right.
They're just so damn busy. And when they get home from a race, the last thing they want to do is go somewhere on Monday morning and do an interview, right? We had a lot of good guests, though. Jimmy Johnson, Clint Boyer was incredible. And he will have, in my mind, our goal is to have Clint here every year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If not a couple, not a couple times a year. Just so much animation, and he's all over the place. And we have this weird friendship that I can't quite. I'd have a hard time describing it, but we don't hang out.
Right.
We have.
Yeah.
We've had time. We drank. We drank in the past. He's come over to the house, and we've had some all-nighters, and we've been out and about on, when our paths have crossed in the banquets or whatever. And he's a great guy to hang out with and drink with, but we haven't. I don't go to his house. He don't call me up on a Wednesday and go, "What's up, man? Let's have some beers." I wish we did, but we don't. But whenever we're hanging out, we just sitting in this room talking. It's a good relationship and a good friendship, and he's so wide open.